We're headed into our final panel for the day and just waiting for one more panelist to join us. There he is. Jesse's on board here. Man, this day is flying by and I can't wait to get into this last session. So much good advice so far, and I hope you're all taking home a lot of notes and action items. So we're going to get into a little bit more of that right now. This session is called How to Not Go Out of Business. So I can't think of any more important topic to end the day on. I think we all would like to stay in business. And I don't know if any of you have heard this stat before, but nearly half of all small businesses end up failing within their first 5 years. Half of all businesses go out of business in less than 5 years. So I want to take a second and celebrate the people that are listening to this. And I would love to hear whether you are, a founder, a CEO, an executive, a team leader, or any member of a small business that's growing. Let us know, how many years have you been around in the chat? I'd love to see all the numbers. How many years have you been in business? Let's fill up the chat here. Wow. First one is 22 from Dustin. Nicole, 7, 27, 4, 3, 12, 35, 25. So disproportionately more than 5 years, actually, which makes sense because I guess if you are the type of person that is into consuming content like this and surrounding yourselves with advice from great leaders, then maybe you beat the curve. And that's what we all want to do, is to beat that data. So we've got 3 amazing founders and CEOs joining us, and we're going to talk about things like how to boost your bottom line, how to stay agile in the market, and how to land funding if that's something that you're interested in. So let me introduce you to these 3. First up, we've got Jesse Horwitz, the co-founder and co-CEO of Hubble. What's up, Jesse?
Hey, how's it going?
Good to see you. I got to ask you about a co-CEO. How is that working?
It's been good. We have not made it to 5 years yet. We just hit 4th anniversary since launch last week. So we'll see. But it's been good. Ben and I were friends before this, and we've enjoyed working together.
And hopefully you're friends still, and friends after this. That's what it's all about. All right, next we got Melanie Travis, CEO of Andie Swim. Melanie, our director of marketing, has been getting retargeted like crazy for your swimwear. So thank you so much.
Good. That's a good sign. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
Yeah, thank you. And last but not least, Anthony Svirskis, CEO of influencer marketing platform Tribe. What's up, Anthony?
Hey, Chris, and perfect pronunciation of the surname as well. Thank you.
Whew, I'm glad I practiced. All right. So we did our best to pull together custom questions for you guys, but if any of you have anything to add, just jump in. This will be pretty casual. So first, I'd love if you could each give us like a 1-minute high-level intro to just what the business is, how many years you've been around, maybe how many employees you have, and just like what you do in the world. So why don't we start with you, Jesse?
Sure. So we've been around 4 years. We sell contact lenses on subscription, both our own brand and other brands. We have 20-something employees today. And yeah, I mean, it's a very simple business. We sell contact lenses on subscription. That's our thing.
Millions of contact lenses, right? Like, let's not understate this. Awesome. How about you, Melanie?
So I'm the founder and CEO of Andie Swim. We're a global e-commerce swimwear brand for women. We've been around for about 3.5 years, and I have 18 employees, which is probably shocking to Jesse if you count the head by sales. But yeah.
Awesome. And Anthony?
Yeah, so I'm the CEO of Tribe. We're a platform that connects brands with content creators to produce branded content that lives on e-commerce, lives in digital ads, lives on social media. We've been around for about 5 years, founded in Australia, where I'm from, but now in the UK and Australia. We've got about 55 people around the world. Very, very pleased to have made it to the 5-year mark, given we're now in the top 50 percentile.
Amazing. All right, so this session is going to be all about not going out of business. I'm sure you can all relate to this in some way, but every year we have to deal with competition and consumer taste changing. This year we had to deal with something completely different and unexpected with the pandemic. So For all of you, I'm curious, how real was the fear of shrinking or going out of business, or just how has that materialized this year?
I'll start because I have very acute and painful memories of March. So March, we've been doing really well. Great growth story. We're only 3.5 years old, but just tremendous year-over-year growth. And this felt like it was going to be our year. When 2019 turned to 2020, I was so excited to really blow things out of the water. 3 months later, I was on the couch, curled into a tiny ball, thinking that was the end of my swimwear business as I knew it. That was like March 15 or March 8. I mean, I don't remember when the world like officially fell apart, but it was, pretty much to the day. March 17th. Thank you for the person in the comments. So that was a pretty bad day. My birthday was March 23rd. I spent it in dire straits, and just thought that would kind of be the end. But actually, as I think we all know, the story goes for e-commerce businesses, turned out to be not only our best year ever, but we were more profitable and grew faster and stronger, and things really turned around quite quickly for us as sort of consumer confidence came back and things started turning around. So yeah, I think I definitely thought this was going to be the year that we did go out of business, and as it turns out, we're stronger and better than ever.
That's great to hear. How about you, Anthony?
Yeah, it's a sort of similar first few weeks for us, not quite in the fetal position, but really sort of considering what was going to happen across the world in marketing and marketing budgets. We sort of really saw 2 or 3 weeks of depressed revenue, and our platform is fully flexible, so users can sort of really just stop on a moment's notice. And that impacted us pretty considerably. But what we also then saw was all attention shifted to digital and online, and that's the flexibility of our platform really catered to that. So revenues came back fairly quickly after that. But where I sort of see businesses and industries through this year is you have those that have huge tailwinds like e-commerce, those that have huge headwinds like tourism and hospitality, and then there's this spectrum in between. And I think we exist in the spectrum in between. We've done really well with our results. We've managed to grow certain parts of the business. Others haven't been so successful, but we're certainly on the right side of that spectrum in between. And the themes of the next few years as digital becomes more prevalent works in our favour. And thankfully, the board and investors also believe in that too.
That's great. Jesse, I guess people didn't decide they didn't want to see clearly anymore in the
I mean, on the one, like, I don't know, I'm always surprised we're still in business. We didn't have any like near death COVID experiences, but you're a performance business, and so like you live and die by your numbers every day, and half the time they're above expectations and half the time they're below expectations because you just reset expectations when they're above. And so like, I don't know, it usually feels like pretty bad.
So I'm curious, Jesse and Andie, are you seeing any trends in the direct to consumer market? Like has anything changed unexpectedly this year?
Yes.
Jesse, you want to take that first?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, you guys were saying like March was all about like low CPMs, and then like all of a sudden everybody's spending tons of money. For us, like fall's been fine, but meaningfully softer. It's like, and we don't know like how much of that's that there wasn't a second stimulus bill, how much of that is like election spending, which I'm like generally pretty skeptical of, but could believe maybe in the like week up, believe in the week up to the election, how much of it is sort of the front loaded Black Friday stuff. But definitely like June, July, April, May, June, July, August were just like, I mean, April, May, June, July were like super fun. And it's like kind of fine now.
Yeah. Trends. Yeah, I mean, I guess just echoing that. I mean, from a different standpoint, from like a personal standpoint, I'm quite a shopper, particularly of D2C brands, and I think the anxieties of the year and of basically everything that happens, it gives me the shoppies, frankly, and I think I'm not alone in that. And so I know I wake up in the morning, I doomsday scroll Instagram, and the next thing I know, I have a cashmere sweater arriving a few days later. And I think that that's something that's happening, across the landscape, and Andie is for sure benefiting from people having the shoppies right now. If shoppies is a trend, I'll take it.
I think Amazon's confused on the days I don't purchase something. They're like,
exactly.
What's wrong with him? Where is he?
Yeah.
Anthony, I'm curious, as an influencer marketing company, how has advertising changed from last year to this year? Is it different at all?
Yeah, look, fundamentally, more's moving to digital. That's where the attention is. But it's not actually just about attention. What I think we're finding with marketers is they're just becoming more agile. And I think D2C marketers have always been agile, but your more traditional marketers are realizing they can't buy media 3 months in advance. They can't create content because the world is changing every week. And one of the great examples we had was Guinness, which is a great beer out of the Ireland. As soon as lockdowns occurred, all their content was unusable because they couldn't show people drinking Guinness in bars because it wasn't happening. And so they turned to us to say, hey, we need your network to produce content about people drinking Guinness at home. And that was super relevant and contextual for the next 6 weeks in the UK during lockdowns. Of course, then lockdowns end and it starts to become about, hey, we want to show people drinking in groups of no more than 3 because that was a regulation now, but in an outdoor setting. And so that ability to be agile is super critical for digital marketing in general. But then you add in the fact that no one really knows what's going to occur in the next 3 months. So people don't want to make long-term plans and they want to remain in the moment as long as they can, I guess, utilize the tools available to them to be able to do that.
Yeah, I remember in March or April starting to see influencer type people posting videos from, in their kitchen or on a Zoom call. And it was so relatable as a consumer that you're just like, oh, they get it.
Exactly. And through this whole period, I think there was just a lot of honesty and authenticity to what everyone was experiencing at the same time. And, creators in our network were really happy to talk about the products they were using at home or the D2C brands that they couldn't live without through this experience. So it actually drove the industry and drove, I guess, more authentic and more raw marketing rather than being polished or being too constructed as to what a creative agency thinks people consume the
more authenticity, which is, I think, better in the long run anyway. Now, Jesse, Hubble took off like wildfire, I guess, in 2016. Can you talk about why this idea? Why were you trying to solve this problem?
Yeah, I mean, I think, contact lenses are a good subscription product. It's, they're inconvenient to reorder them. We include the daily disposable lenses, which are healthier than other subcategories. But, I think also part of it was just sort of not macro backdrop, but more broader. It was during a period where there's a lot of enthusiasm about box subscription. So that was a good time launching a box subscription business.
Mm-hmm. Melanie, did you ever think about like a bathing suit subscription service, or was that never a business model you considered?
Not a business model. I came from BarkBox, a subscription service for dogs, before I started Andie. Obviously see tremendous value in a subscription company for all that recurring revenue, but just doesn't work in my category.
Yeah. So I'm curious, Melanie, for you, when was the aha moment that you knew you were onto something with Andie?
It was pretty early. It was pretty early in the life of the company. I started it. I mostly bootstrapped it to start, just to see if this was something that had any legs. And early indications that this came in fast through. I mean, I basically used word of mouth and press as indicators to know if people would be interested, if women would be interested in buying this product. And when press started writing about it, and organically, not paid, and people were buying, before we really started investing in paid, social. That to me was like, okay, from a baseline, this is a product that women want. And I think in general, one thing that I've learned and believe is that consumers are really savvy. And, even though I have a background in marketing and feel like I believe that I'm a great marketer, I also don't think that you can pay, in my case, women, all the money in the world to buy a product that they don't want or that's bad. It has to start with a good product if you're in a product business as I am. And then once you, so sort of like, okay, do we have a good product? Yes, we do. Well, okay, if we have a great product, let's turn on the faucets, let's raise some money. I can actually make this thing work. So it was pretty early with the product feedback.
I'm curious, when we were first starting Trainual, Jonathan, my brother, was head of marketing, but I still had to do a lot of marketing myself, just shooting videos or posting things online. How much have each of you embraced this marketing role? Do you do a lot of that marketing? Did you have to learn that skill as well?
Yeah. I always say this to founders is everybody wants to hand off marketing because it's really unpleasant and not be involved at all. And that it ends up being an area you have to make yourself very knowledgeable about because it's where your money goes. So if, as a business owner, your job is investing dollars and hopefully getting back than you put in, that's one of two places.
Yeah, totally agree.
Anthony, you were nodding too. Anything to add?
Yeah, look, I'm fortunate. The founder of the company is a marketing machine. He's an ex-TV radio host, very creative and visionary, but comes with a profile, especially in Australia. And we were able to generate PR. He's a storyteller, which is a phenomenal layer to a technical marketer. And I actually studied marketing, probably more of a technical marketer, but it's quite a powerful combination when you can really interlace storytelling with distribution.
100%. So for anyone listening, this is something I always thought of myself as the operations person, the business person, and I let my brother be the marketing person. But it wasn't until I embraced that things really started to take off, and it was definitely a combined effort. So I think we all have to be marketers to some extent. Anthony, you mentioned joining as CEO. So there was a founder, you knew the founder well. How did you get involved?
I didn't know the founder at all. We met through a recruiter. As I said, he was a profile in Australia. Had a great idea, classic founder in the sense of visionary and creative, but had never run a business and needed someone to really help take his ideas and strategize on them and execute on them. And it was quite a unique scenario for a founder and a CEO to join effectively from the beginning. But it works really well because, the skill sets required, as I spoke before about the marketing skill sets of storytelling and technical marketing are quite diverse and rare you find them in the same person. And we're able to really understand each other's strengths, divide and conquer to a degree. And we've got a very trusting and communicative relationship. We're quite comfortable talking to each other, calling each other out, and really invest in that relationship because any partnership requires that.
What kind of self-awareness does it take to know that you're not the one to scale the business, that you need a CEO or that you need a COO, or, if anybody's listening to this and feels that there's maybe something missing, what would you say to them?
Self-awareness, I think, is a very underrated skill. It comes with, I guess, time and experience and probably the right people around you. Jules, the founder, has it in spades. And I've actually found my own self-awareness has been developed so much through the process. But yeah, it takes maturity and it takes trust. And as I said, when you can get it right, it works. But we also know it's really rare what we have and the success of it. And more we learn that because, as you said at the start, businesses are hard in themselves. Partnerships are hard in themselves, even if you think about personal relationships. Yeah. Combine the two and you really have to make sure it works well.
Right. Okay. So let's turn and talk about something that could definitely put us all out of business, and that's competition. Melanie, I read the global swimwear market's estimated to reach $28 billion in the next 4 years. So how do you stand out in a market like that where there's just so many players?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, part of it comes down to the size of the market. Like you said, if it's a big market, and I would argue that a $28 billion market is that, then it can sustain a lot of competitors. I think when I first started Andie, I guess a few things. One is that I don't know how many people are just about to start a business. If most people have been in business for a long time, they already know this, but I didn't do a lot of research. I kind of took my own personal experiences shopping for a swimsuit, which I found to be incredibly frustrating, and decided, you know what, if I'm frustrated, others probably are. I'm going to start a swimsuit business. If I had spent more time researching the competitive landscape, I would have observed or come to learn that there are literally a trillion swimwear brands out there. And I probably would never have started Andie. And so that's where the value of a big market comes in. I didn't know that there were all these swimwear brands, and my naivete was incredibly helpful, because now Andie's grown so much, and we keep growing, and it frankly doesn't really matter that there are a lot of other players out there. I would not enter a competitive market that's a really small one. Like if there was a sub-$1 billion market or something and it was highly competitive, I think that's probably not a good idea. But it's totally fine. Yeah.
I love that perspective. I think now that's a real challenge for people, because it's so easy to just Google things and be like, oh, that idea exists, let me just give up. And
totally.
It used to be that you tell your family at the table and they think it's a great idea, so you do it, right?
Yeah. Exactly.
Anthony, same question to you. This influencer industry has become more competitive, right? So when you see copycats pop up, what do? Do you pay attention to them? Do you let it influence what you're doing?
I'm a highly competitive individual, so I often get sucked into seeing what others are doing. But look, we are very differentiated. It's one of the challenges at the moment is we do things differently. We actually don't consider ourselves an influencer marketing business. It's more about creating content that has far greater utility. But that's one of our problems. People love to lump you in with others, and so we're doing a big project at the moment to differentiate ourselves. But I was listening to a podcast the other day about from Simon Sinek talking about your rivals as opposed to your competitors, and really sort of seeing them and recognizing this, hey, look, they're doing stuff well, we're doing stuff differently. I'm going to use that to continue to motivate myself, but I'm not necessarily going to put myself head to head, because we've got our own direction, and myself and the founder continuously come back to that. And what we find, it is a big market. We do so much more than just that one thing, and actually very rarely rub shoulders with the same competitor too often. So it's extremely fragmented, and we just back ourselves on what we're doing, and it's going well.
Yeah, I think when I see competitors pop up, our sales team or customer support team will be like, have you heard of this? And it constantly forces me to refine our differentiation, because when you've got a huge market, you have the ability to do things a little differently. And whether it's your product or your brand or your approach or your target customer, there's some way you can be different. So it sounds like you've both discovered that. Next question, the next thing I guess that could put people out of business is margins. And so I'm curious from your standpoint, Jesse, when you think about competition in a business that has some downward pressure, when people are shopping for contact lenses and want to buy the cheapest thing, how do you keep from reducing your price year over year?
Fortunately, our largest competitor in the e-commerce landscape, 1-800-Contacts, generally increases their prices year over year. So that helps. I think it's one of the things that's nice about a direct response business. It's not that not that competitors don't matter, not that you can't, not that you can just ignore them, but you have your own metrics coming in every day, and so it's sort of whatever. If your ROAS numbers aren't there, like whether it's whether it's something competitors are doing, or it's some auction some auction dynamic, or it's the election, or it's whatever it is, you still need to figure out how to make your math work. And so all the things that you would do to respond to competitors, like tinkering with changing that price, pricing and offer strategy and all those things. You don't need to know you can look, but you don't need to know what your competitors are doing, because if your numbers aren't working, it doesn't matter what everyone else is doing. And on the flip side, if your numbers are working, it doesn't matter what everyone else is doing.
Yeah, great point. Melanie, how about you? How did you set your price early on when you were coming up with the swimwear line?
In the very beginning, and I don't know that this is the best advice, but sometimes it's okay to do things that like don't scale or even make much sense in the beginning when you're testing things out. And I really was going for like, what is the appetite, and at what price point, how does price point impact conversion on our website? And so we've actually changed our pricing a bit over time. And we started at I think they were $125 when we first launched. And now our swimsuits are $95. And that's both a product of, there's a real step function increase in conversion on site when you lower your price. And that outweighed some of the, some of the margin compression in the beginning. But then it sort of fed into, then our volume started increasing dramatically enough that we were able to take our manufacturing overseas and then reduce our COGS that way. And so actually now we have massive margins, and we continue to play with pricing. I mean, we're 3.5 years old. We still keep playing. We introduce new fabrics, test out a price point. If it doesn't work, we'll kind of move it around a little bit. So yeah.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I was talking to Anne, the founder of 23andMe, a few weeks back, and she mentioned how she had a $299 product, and they would sell a couple hundred a week. One day they dropped it to $99 and sold 17,000 kits in a day. And so there is some price dynamics that if people listening, you haven't tried that, then like Melanie said, test the conversion rates. Have you played with pricing at all, Anthony?
Yeah, I just came off a pricing meeting prior to this call, and I see pricing as a movable strategy, and we're a software business, so we've actually got a benefit where we add more value to what a customer's getting, and then we charge it accordingly. And we've done a lot of changing this year. It's pushed prices up, but it's also delivered value at the same time, and customers are responding really positively, and there'll be more that we do over the next year or so. But as I said, like, we always try to create a value proposition or a value step change that reflects a higher price or perhaps a different sort of bundle that someone might take up.
Yeah. When I was consulting, I would increase the price with every new engagement until people would say no. And then I was like, okay, I found the right price.
That's the general rule. If no one's complaining about the price, you're too cheap.
Melanie, I read that you're against discounting. Is that true, or can you speak about that a little?
I mean, sure. I'd like that to be thought of about me. I think that's a great thing to strive for. And I hesitate to say that that's like not really the case, but I guess the honest answer is that's not really the case. We definitely discount. We play with it though a lot, and there's certain things we don't discount. Like our best-selling suit is a suit called the Amalfi in black. We never put it on sale ever, and we never will. But I think it's great to sort of pound the table that you're against discounting, but then like quietly discount and watch conversion go up, sales go up, and have a great day.
Yeah, makes sense. All right, so I want to switch into R&D and innovation, because I think another way to not go out of business is to sort of become irrelevant or get stale. And all of us need to kind of stay in the forefront there. So Melanie, I'll stick with you for a second. You've always seemed to have a good pulse on who your customer is and what they want. So how do you keep building a product around the customer? What does that feedback loop look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the real strengths of Andie, and one of the areas that we've invested the most in. Up until 2 weeks ago, we didn't have even a designer on staff. Now we hired a designer because we just have too many styles to come out with next year. But prior to that, we didn't have a designer as sort of a way of ensuring that all of the design ideas for new products and development were really originating from the customer and not from someone whose job is to like dictate what the next great new style is. And so we have a pretty robust in-house customer support team. We call them our fit experts. Now we're not really at the the office, but when we were, they'd sit right next to the marketing team and the product team. And we have a really robust feedback loop where they can share, this is what customers like, this is what they don't like, these are the ideas we're getting. And that's how we now offer rash guards. That was born from customer demand. We switched our fabric to an eco-friendly spandex, which is, hard to do, rare in the swim industry, totally born from our customers. And as we develop new categories and extensions, it really comes from customers. And so we listen. And I think that's also where we just take a really holistic view of the customer experience. And we try to be really proactive instead of reactive. And that's how we really have, I think, been customer led from the beginning. And even though we have a designer on staff, I don't think that'll change.
Yeah. Jesse, Melanie just mentioned customer experience, and it seems like innovation for you has been all about the customer experience, right? Which is making it easier so they don't have to think about getting their contact lenses. So I'm curious, how do you think about R&D? Like what do you put towards this in resources? How far out are you planning and thinking?
I'm involved in a few different e-commerce businesses. On the Hubble side, honestly, less on you're talking about like when, that there hasn't been meaningful, there's been new products put on the market. It's a little bit like the razor industry. There has been new products put on the market in the last 20 years, but there hasn't been like meaningful clinical improvements. And to the extent competitors or whatever to the extent branded manufacturers release those products, we're happy to sell them and do sell them anyway. But I think more like, to what Melanie was saying, just one of the best things about, direct response marketing online is the customer just tells you what they want. And so like, people ask for different products and we'll just stock them. And that's like the best way to fill customer demand is people tell you their product specs. Like I'm involved in a stroller business and like everybody asked for a double stroller. So the first like real product extension that we released was a double stroller. It's like you think about sort of old school consumer insights work and like focus groups and all this, like just check out the comment feed on the ad and people will tell you what they want. And that's really helpful.
I knew nothing about the stroller industry until I had two kids. And now we've got like, the skateboard that attaches to the stroller and like the umbrellas and it's like a go-go gadget mobile with like all the attachments. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about just marketing, brand awareness, and getting the word out there. Anthony, as being in this content creation, influencer marketing business, is that a tool that you use to get the word out there about Tribe?
We're actually at the moment going through a bit of a community strategy where we're leveraging our community, not necessarily to promote Tribe, but more to educate the community. So previously, we've always been telling them, hey, this is how you create great content, and this is how you win on our app, and this is the best way to do this. Now we're trying to engage members of the community who are doing all that really well to start educating newcomers into the app, so that it becomes sort of two-way conversations between members rather than everything being channeled through us. And that's something that's occurring. Certainly a really positive movement for our community, because that's a very important part of our whole business.
Melanie, how about you? Early on with Andie, was social media a big driver of your growth, or how did you get the early word out?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Well, the first thing we invested in was PR. As a fashion brand, we felt like we needed some legitimacy, and press could give that to us. And so we first invested in press, and then obviously quickly sort of leveraged those pieces into paid social ads. So we'd run, promoted ads to some of the pieces about us. And then paid social took off and it's massive, and influencer marketing is a core part of our strategy, and it works super well. And so that was always true. And I think that kind of took off even more for us during COVID, when we really leaned on influencers. And I don't even mean major ones, micro influencers in our community to, promote the product, talk about the brand, even do photo shoots for us when we couldn't during COVID. So social and influencer are core strategies.
Got it. And Jesse, speaking of ads, I know you ran some mock ads before you even had the product. Is that right?
You always need to do like little different demand tests. We launched, we raised without product. And so you have to convince people, you have to show people some kind of demand data. So we ran all sorts of little tests like that.
So you have to correct me if this is wrong, but I heard you got 2,000 signups in 4 days for a product that didn't exist. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yeah. I mean, we did, it's just email addresses and leads, but yes. Yeah.
So incredible tip for anyone listening. You put so much thought into that. You've got to create this whole thing, and really you've got to create demand. And if you create demand, the product, the execution, the delivery can all follow. So you mentioned funding right there, and we've got maybe 10 minutes left. I want to touch on this a little bit because I think between the four of us, we've all raised a good deal of funding. Not every business wants to raise funding. And I know for founders, it's a tough decision to decide to sell a chunk of equity in the business. So I'm curious how each of you thought about this. Why did you decide that equity financing was a good decision?
I mean, for me, I didn't honestly ever think otherwise. I'd too chicken shit to partly it was just it was a period when there was a lot of venture money coming into direct commerce, which is, is very different today. There's lots of, the same or probably more so great brands getting started right now. But the sort of bootstrapping path is talked about a lot more and much more popular now. It was just sort of we just kind of assumed that we needed to raise money for the thing. And if we didn't raise money for the thing, then that meant there wasn't a business there. But that's very much sort of a 2016 kind of way of looking at things.
Melanie, yours was different. I read that you traded equity for manufacturing. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, I've done both. So we've raised, I think, about $8.5 million in venture funding, and then we also struck an equity deal with our manufacturer, which was then they ended up becoming an investor, a cash investor as well. But first, it was really it was a strategic partnership to align incentives, give us, massive powerhouse sort of supply chain that was way beyond the scale that we were, great working capital terms, stuff like that. So both, and they really enabled us to scale a lot. And yeah, I mean, the equity thing is, I think it can be a tough decision, but it's also sometimes not a decision. Sometimes for various, you either need it or you don't. And if you need it and you can't get it, which now, like Jesse said, it's very, very hard. The landscape has changed. Then maybe you don't have a business. But if you don't need it, then definitely don't get it because well, not necessarily, but it just makes things a lot harder down the road.
How about you, Anthony? Thoughts on raising money?
Yeah, look, I think the trade-off is fair, right? You're getting in cash and you're giving away equity. You got to be comfortable with the amount you give away, and that's different for everyone. But I think to Melanie's point, it just changes the trajectory of your business for good and bad. And once you start raising, it puts you on a pathway. It places people in your business who have expectations. You got to be really careful about the partners you choose. There's a sort of saying in Australia about gut feel, right? You'll know if this is someone who gets your vision, who really looks like someone who's going to partner with you through good and bad, and the terms will reflect that. And I think if you're comfortable, then it's a great thing. If you feel uncomfortable about it, then it's not a great thing.
Yeah. Some of the best advice I ever got was whether we wanted to raise money or not, we should be in a position where we could raise money, where the metrics looked good and we had a plan for what we would do with the money. And then if we needed to, we'd be able to raise money. And, this theme of how to not go out of business, a big part of it is don't run out of money, right? So for all of you that went through this kind of process, do you have any tips on what you did in advance of raising money that made it a little bit easier?
For me, it was the manufacturing deal that you just mentioned. I put that deal in place before I raised money. So I bootstrapped it, saw some legs to the business, struck a strategic partnership with a major manufacturer, and then went out to raise money. So I both had some very early metrics on organic press and word of mouth, and I had this powerhouse manufacturing deal, and investors I mean, it took almost no time to raise my seed round because it was like the whole package was right there. If I had gone out before doing either of those things, I probably wouldn't have a business right now because I'd still be pounding the pavement.
Wow. How about you guys, Anthony, Jesse?
Yeah, look, we've always been an organised business, and so everything has been in order. Know which metrics are the important metrics. I think we're always intending to raise money, so like you, just very well prepared for it. But you certainly want to get your shit together, right? And have your paperwork, your admin, all your legals, your IP, and make it as easy as possible for investors, because once you get someone in, you really want to close that as quickly as possible. And if it takes you months to go through due diligence, it just challenges the deal.
Totally. It can become your full-time job, and we all have jobs, so we don't want that, right? All right, we had a couple of great audience questions, so I want to go into these. How do you calculate lifetime value of a customer when it comes to your threshold for traffic acquisition? So do any of you have like a ratio of acquisition cost to lifetime value?
We actually take the retention curve. We take the we take the margin dollars per order. We haircut it by the retention curve, and then we take the we take the customer acquisition cost as a negative cash flow at the front, and we just do an IRR calculation of the whole thing. And and we have certain internal rate of return target that we're looking for, and that's how much we're willing to spend for a customer. And then I think one of the things that that people do. One of the things that I disagree with how some people think about this is they'll do that and they'll say, oh, my CPA target is whatever, $100, and so I should so I want an average CPA of 100. And I don't think it's hard to get at, and there's no like precise cut of it, but I think a lot of founders could spend more time on like, what am I actually paying for my incremental customer? Like the most expensive customer that I'm buying off platform, how much is that customer costing? Because that's the cost. Like you don't like, if your average customer is at your return threshold, that probably means your most expensive customer is way above it. So I think that's like, we've generally managed to average CPAs that are pretty far below our return threshold, not because we're trying to be conservative, but just because we're trying to guess at where our most expensive customers are on pricing.
Yeah. I mean, that's the same. Actually, we have a very different business because we're not subscription. And so I just look at contribution margin on first order to know what my CPA threshold is. But I think right now that we've reached such scale and we're going for even more, it's that I'm really focused on each sort of decile of customers and how how expensive each incremental one is as we go up the sort of layers of the cake, so to speak.
So interesting. Okay, next one here. Probably the last one we'll be able to fit in. Jay says, what are the best ways to validate your idea before plowing capital into it? Melanie, you mentioned news and PR. Jesse, you mentioned pre-launch ads. They'd love some elaboration on best ways to validate your idea.
I'll go a different direction with this because I want to tack on to what Anthony was saying before, which is talking with investors. I think I think it's tough. What you need both. Like you need from a mechanical from a mechanical perspective, you don't ever want logistics and finance operations to be a barrier to accepting money. The moment somebody wants to give you money, if you're looking to raise, you want to be in the position of accepting the money. But I think a lot of founders I think founders underestimate how many investors there are out there. There's basically infinite. And so they're really skittish about approaching investors, and they're like, oh God, I want to get, 1 bajillion things done before I start talking to folks. And you can kind of just you shouldn't no one investor conversation is so precious. Investor conversations are a very valuable source of information and feedback on what businesses are finding fit with investors at a given point in time. And so the danger of, if you want to bootstrap the business, it just doesn't matter. But even if you want to bootstrap it, but you're looking to sell it at some point, unless you're looking to operate the business and live off the cash flows it produces, which is whatever, that's just a business. So that's great. But like, unless that's the plan, if you're planning to raise for it or you're planning to sell it, like talking to the people who would be making such decisions to see if it's the kind of asset that they want to own, is probably a good thing to do sooner rather than later. And the thought that you're sort of blowing your wad if you approach them too early, is silly, because there's more of them.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Every time we do investor roadshows, like you learn so much from each conversation, even to the point where I tend to put the big conversations I'm looking forward to towards the middle or end, because I want the first half a dozen to really sort of test me and ask the questions that I haven't thought of, and so that you're really informed when you get to the ones that you want to win. So it's absolutely a learning experience.
Amazing. All right. Well, we're at the end of our time here, but I think everybody listening has gotten so much value. Thank you for sharing your stories and hopefully helping all of the businesses that are listening not go out of business and to be in that 5-year plus journey. So thank you again for the wisdom. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, everyone else, hang tight. Our last session of the day is about to start, 4 minutes away. And we've got Jason Pfeiffer, who's the editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. Stay tuned.